The Steam Next Fest for 2024 is here, and with it come a ton of game demos for titles arriving in 2024 and beyond. It really feels like there are more demos this time around than there were last year, but I could be wrong. I decided to give a number of these games a try, and I came away with 5 of those that really piqued my interest, and I'm going to discuss those here. Let's dive right in. The first game up is I Am Your Beast by developer Strange Scaffold, who's probably best known for El Paso Elsewhere, which was one of my favorite titles of 2023. This is a fast-paced FPS that requires the player to efficiently clear levels of enemies while also completing objectives. There were 4 levels to play in all, including the tutorial, and I really think this one was a lot of fun. If it's anything like El Paso Elsewhere, it's going to be a game that is a lot longer than expected. The last level you can play was marked 17, so I assume that just like El Paso, that might not even be the middle point of the game. And if you have not played El Paso Elsewhere, I recommend it. It is a far meatier experience than I really expected. I'm also looking forward to the narrative of I Am Your Beast, as there are dialogue tapes between each stage, and what's found here in the demo is pretty intriguing. The tutorial level does drop hints about the main character and his connection to the organization hunting him, and knowing the developer, the narrative might be far deeper than anyone anticipates. Levels are going to be deeply replayable, and I am very curious to see the speedruns for this game as players become more proficient at chaining together mechanics while getting their pathing down. It is a lot of fun to land on enemies, grab a weapon out of midair, shoot someone, and then throw that weapon when you're out of ammo. There are going to be far more skilled players getting deep into the mechanics in this game, and I can't wait to see just how fast people complete these levels, and I'm pretty sure it's going to surprise the developer as well. I think I saw somewhere someone complete a level in like 17 seconds, which is insane to me considering I was really struggling at times, but the mechanics here are a lot of fun. I Am Your Beast arrives on August 15th, 2024. Next on my list is Bo, Path of the Teal, Lotus, and this is a Metroidvania platformer that is absolutely stunning. The opening section features an explosion with a massive demon skeleton that appears and just kind of walks the opposite direction in the background, and I'm going to say that was one of the coolest things I've seen this year. The gameplay in the demo, though, starts off pretty slow. Once you acquire your primary weapon, you have to gather resources to upgrade this weapon to break down the wall in front of you. This is a weird choice because you have to backtrack some distance to break down certain bamboo rods, and I thought that was just so weird. I don't think I've seen that in many games, but once you get past that part, the game really starts to show its potential. Platforming is tight and responsive, and I enjoy the fact that attacking while in midair will grant you a second jump, and this is how you're going to navigate the first major area. There are a number of hidden paths to find, a few bosses to fight, and a puzzle section that requires you to use your bamboo bat, and that's something you required during the demo, to return creatures known as armadillos to its master. That's their name. They're also indestructible. That last part is a lot of fun, by the way, because you're going to find out that the armadillos are the only way you can break through certain bamboo, so you have to use them constantly, or at least search them out and use them constantly. And when you get to the end of the demo, you're going to unlock the dash ability, which was a welcome sight because as a Metroidvania fan and veteran, I would have loved to have gotten this early, or at least had this early, because you don't move that quickly in this game. But once you have that dash, though, you can chain mechanics together to clear gaps that you could not before, and I really think this game does a good job of ramping up the platforming at the end to keep the player engaged and intrigued. Once you complete the demo, you get this nice little video showcase, and it details all the movement tech that you're going to eventually unlock in the game, and it looks fantastic. Once this game sped up significantly, I was really happy because I was concerned that you just weren't moving quickly enough at the start of the game, and I didn't think that it was going to keep the player invested, but I am glad to be wrong. Bo, Path of the Teal, Lotus releases on July 17th, 2024. For the Souls-like fans out there, Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn is one that I think should be on your radar, but I do believe that this is the one game out of all of these that I'm covering here in this video. It's the one game that I'm glad is coming to Game Pass. And that's primarily because the start of it is not great. It actually felt repetitive because the combat is so bland. Basically, you can guard, parry, dodge, attack, but the big curveball is that you can interrupt enemies with your pistol as long as they're attacking, and that is a mechanic that was found in Bloodborne. I think fans are going to enjoy that. When it comes to the melee combat, though, there is no heavy attack, at least early on. There is no charge attack. You're pretty much just mashing the R1 button until they die. And the pistol helps keep combat somewhat fresh, and it's just a small layer of strategy, especially when you're trying to face multiple targets. And I really feel like something you should keep in mind if you ever feel overwhelmed when you're playing this game. But it was one of the things where I was kind of curious as to why there really was an emphasis on other things in this game rather than the combat. But the moment you start to take a look at the skill trees, you get to see all the different abilities. And I really feel like that's great because it's going to expand your existing repertoire, but it's also super expensive. And it feels like there are certain hidden mechanics that should be unlocked now to help get the player invested instead of costing like 5,000 to 6,000 per resource to unlock, which I thought was really strange when I saw it, but I assume Flintlock is going to be a short game. Now, what really piqued my interest about this game are the other mechanics. You are joined by a god named Enki, and he grants you this double jump and air dash early, which is awesome for traversal and exploration. It looks stylish as hell. You're propelling yourself with black powder, and these mechanics can also be used to escape in combat and also used in combat as well. Enki as a character will support you by marking enemies for death. And this is a significant mechanic because when you face certain armored enemies, your attacks really do nothing. So basically you have to mark them and attack at the same time to fill that gauge up. And once it's been properly filled, enemies will lose their armored status. After you attack them, you get this really cool animation, and then they're open up to big damage. You're also granted this special ability that you have to kind of charge up that will then clear groups of enemies and stun them in place, which is really awesome because it allows you to get a lot of experience quickly, and then you can also chain different mechanics together. I really enjoyed it when I was able to use it, and I found that it was pretty easy to get this gauge filled up quickly, so I think that's a plus. One of the abilities I unlocked early was that I was able to summon Enki to grab an enemy and put them into stasis. He pretty much just lifts them off the ground. Once you attack, he slams them down violently, and this ability is amazing. You can only do it to enemies that are unarmored, but the moment you have them up off the ground and slammed, you are doing big damage. Most enemies will go down fairly quickly. Now, while this game is a Souls-like, you are allowed to select your difficulty, and I think that's great for accessibility, and this allows players to get acclimated to the game. But the traversal mechanics found here are what's going to bring me back to Flintlock. There are so many hidden areas to discover, and I was having a really good time zipping from area to area with the double jump and dash combo. One of the things I love is that it's not just a double jump and a dash, it is all of that together. So you can just chain to get across these big areas. You can also double jump at the very end if you fall from a great height, and it will save you from taking any type of damage, which is something I really like because you unlock it very early. Now, I think the thing with this demo was that it was probably the longest of all the ones that I played. It just took so long for me to get interested in this game. But I will say, looking at the map, looking at the size and scope of the game, looking at how ambitious this game is ultimately going to be, that's probably one of the major reasons as to why I'm really interested in Flintlock. And I'm hoping that as the game goes along and it scales, that you're going to be more capable in combat, and that combat will eventually evolve and become more interesting. Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn releases on July 18th, 2024. And like I mentioned before, if you play the demo and you're skeptical of buying, it is going to be on Game Pass, so keep that in mind. The next game I'm going to discuss is probably one that took me by surprise, and I think it's my favorite demo that I played, honestly, and that is Tactical Breach Wizards by developer Suspicious Developments. I love this game. I thought it was fantastic. I remember wishlisting almost immediately after the demo concluded. This is a turn-based strategy RPG with a wizard twist. So if you played XCOM, If you played any strategy RPG and you saw the modern tactical characters, weapons, gear, all that stuff like that, now take that and put in wizards, but they're wearing Kevlar, and I can't explain it, but this demo was a ton of fun. The tutorial does an excellent job of getting the player acclimated with the different mechanics and introducing the playable characters. It can feel a bit overwhelming at first, but I really feel like because of the different mechanics in this game, everything starts to click really quickly once you start to see how enemies react to your movement, all that type of stuff. One of the things I loved about this is that as soon as I was starting to get used to the controls, I learned that certain stages can be completed in one turn if you're able to knock them out of the arena, and mostly that's through windows, or you're chaining attacks together with your team. There were 2 playable wizards in this demo, each with their own unique abilities, and I really like the fact that the developers really pushed for character synergy. It was a lot of fun figuring out how things worked, where an enemy was going to be knocked to, and whether or not they can kill one another, and spoiler alert, they can. If you happen to see an enemy type that fires if someone moves within their line of sight, you can push an enemy with one of your abilities into that area, and the end result will be one less enemy, and it is incredibly satisfying. As you progress through an area, stages will start to become more complex, and players will have to figure out how to quickly eliminate enemies while sealing off doors or completing other objectives. You'll also have different breaching opportunities, so it's not just the same door every time. You can actually switch around if you want to. It was just a whole lot of fun to think about, and usually in these types of games, I can be overwhelmed when experimenting, but not here. I was just having a good time seeing how everything worked. The dialogue also found in this game is sharp. It is very funny, and I really enjoyed watching the banter between the different wizards as they were trying to make sense of the conspiracy and their lives, because it was really funny seeing these guys talk about how they haven't had jobs in a couple months, how things kind of fell apart when they left the military. And as a veteran, I thought that was really funny, where they were just sitting there like, yeah, man, I haven't had a job in a couple of months, or I haven't seen something in this long, or I've been lying to myself about some of my friends. That type of stuff comes up, and it's just natural. It's funny. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the story goes. And this is honestly just a game that I'm really looking forward to. And I enjoy the fact that it's really accessible. You have a rewind feature, and you also have the ability of foresight in case you want to see the outcome of your decisions. And I think that's really cool and something that really fits being a wizard, because one of the characters, their entire thing is foresight, but he gets shit on constantly because it feels like he's not using it to the best of his capabilities. And that is 100% true. Tactical Breach Wizards really took me by surprise, and this is one of the few games that I am super hyped for, and I'm looking forward to when it releases on August 22nd. The last game I'm going to cover is one that I was looking forward to the moment it was announced, and that is Metal Slug Tactics. I'm a huge fan of this series, and when I saw this game, in my head, I foolishly believed that this was going to be a fun, lighthearted, arcadey strategy RPG, and I was going to breeze right through it, and I could not have been more wrong. The thing is, Metal Slug Tactics does not pull punches. It really doesn't. This is a roguelike strategy RPG. I guess that's the best way I'm going to describe it, because here's the thing. When you open up the first area, you have a number of stages to challenge. And if you happen to lose all of your lives in the process of clearing a map or whatever stage you're in, you have to restart that area completely. And everything just gets randomized again. And you start in different areas. And some of these areas, you're going to learn, can be really tough when you're just trying to figure out what the different mechanics are and how everything works. And it can be pretty overwhelming at first. What I learned early on was that, yeah, your characters come equipped with a primary and a secondary, and that secondary weapon has limited ammo. So I thought, and I don't know why I thought this, was that your secondary would be reloaded every time you enter a new stage. That's not how that works. Basically, you have to kind of strategize where you want to go so that that secondary can be reloaded after the stage ends. If you happen to burn through that ammo while going through a stage, you're going to find yourself without a secondary, and that is going to make every fight later on very difficult. You have a number of stages to complete before the boss shows up. Once that boss shows up, everything shuts down, you get a cutscene, and you are then fighting the boss. It is game time. And if you don't have a secondary weapon, that fight becomes really difficult. Metal Slug Tactics wants to challenge you early on, but it does get easier after you die the first few times, because then you're introduced to reinforcements and all these different upgrades, a shop, all that stuff, which I really liked. I like the fact that they let the player get their feet wet, and then afterwards they say, hey, here's some things that can help you. There's surprisingly a lot of depth here, and this game was a lot of fun to play once I understood the mechanics. So, one of the primary mechanics in this game is the adrenaline system. And basically, the game wants you to move around the map as often as possible to unlock your special skills and abilities. If you are stationary throughout these turns, you are not maximizing your time. Some abilities will grant extra attacks, increased damage, movement tech, etc. Just know that you need to move around constantly to ensure that you're behind cover or setting yourself up for a sync attack, which is one of the best ways to maximize damage in this game. Move around as often as possible, or you make this game exponentially harder. Your choice. But after being the demo, and that boss fight, by the way, was epic, and it's probably something you're going to be seeing on the screen, you're going to unlock the character Tarma, and you're also going to be able to replay this one area on higher difficulties. Metal Slug Tactics next to Tactical Breach Wizards ended up being one of the best demos I've played, and I'm really looking forward to the game's full release later in 2024. And that's going to do it for this video. So tell me, what games did you play during Steam's Next Fest? Leave a comment below, and let me know if any of the games I covered are those that piqued your interest. If you happen to like the video, please consider sharing, and subscribing. I am Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I will talk to you next time.